In this first video, we are going to look at the IELTS speaking test scoring system. Now, the IELTS speaking test scores range from band 0 to band 9 and they are based on 4 criteria. The first criterion is fluency and coherence. This is worth 25% of your band score. Let's compare two candidates. One of them has achieved band 5 and the other has achieved band 8. The candidate with a low band usually maintains flow of speech but uses repetition, self-correction, and slow speech to keep going. In other words, this candidate tends to speak very slowly. He doesn't speak confidently. He tends to make a lot of mistakes. He corrects himself and then he keeps speaking. And therefore, he can't impress the examiner. Next, this candidate may overuse certain connectives and discourse markers. The idea is he uses a lot of connectives in his response. For example, he might say, moreover, in the first sentence, in addition to this, in the second sentence, aside from this, in the third sentence, and so forth. So all of these connectives might irritate the examiner because he overuses them. Last but not least, this candidate produces simple speech fluently, but more complex communication causes fluency problems. The idea is this candidate can use only the present simple confidently. As soon as he begins to use complex sentences with such keywords as although, even though, despite the fact that, while, he tends to make a lot of mistakes and therefore he can't get a high band. Now let's focus on the other candidate whose answers are far better. This candidate speaks fluently with only occasional repetition or self-correction. In other words, this candidate can speak quickly, professionally, and confidently. Even though he makes mistakes, these mistakes are rare, and therefore he sounds like a native English speaker. Next, his hesitation is usually content related and only rarely to search for language. So the idea is, even though he pauses for a while, he does it in order to find the correct idea for his response. He might start looking for a relevant example to reinforce his response. Next, this candidate develops topics coherently, which means logically, and appropriately, which means relevant to the questions asked. Now please ask yourself, what steps should I take to improve my fluency and coherence? Okay guys, now let's focus on fluency and coherence. I will help you to understand what the examiner expects you to do, and I'll give you some advice on how to improve your coherence. The examiner is highly intelligent, therefore he will compare his question addressed to you with your response before deciding whether you have answered the question precisely or not. In order to understand what I mean, let's analyze the following question and answer in detail. So the question is, what sports activities are popular in your country? Now let's focus on this poor response. So a candidate might say, I believe that football is quite a popular sporting activity in my country. Okay, now let's analyze this response in detail. Okay, so even though the candidate has answered this question, he hasn't answered this question completely. Why not? Because the examiner wants to know about several sports activities, as the key phrase in the question is sports activities. As a result, this candidate is unlikely to achieve a high score or band in the writing or speaking section. Now let's analyze the next example. So again, we have the same question: what sports activities are popular in your country? And a candidate might say, I like playing football as this game is fun. In addition to this sport teaches me how to cooperate with my team members and support one another. Okay, now let's analyze these responses in detail. It can be seen that the candidate hasn't answered the examiner's question precisely because the examiner doesn't want to know what sports the candidate likes playing. The examiner wants to know which sports activities are popular in his or her country. Make sure not to answer like this if you don't want to get a low score in the writing or speaking section. The bottom line is his answer is highly irrelevant, so I would strongly advise staying on the topic, so don't digress. Now let's focus on a high scoring response. The question is the same: what sports activities are popular in your country? Okay, and this candidate says, I believe that football and badminton are popular in my country. While teenagers tend to play football at local stadiums all the time, adults and seniors tend to play badminton in sports centers. In this example, the candidate has been able to answer this question precisely because he has explained which two sports are popular in his country. In addition to this, he has used a complex structure by explaining why each sport is popular and what kind of people play them. Therefore, this candidate deserves a high score in the writing or speaking section. Okay, in order to link ideas, it is essential to use linking devices which connect the present idea with the previous one. Use the following linking devices to achieve this goal. In addition to this, aside from this, apart from this, furthermore, moreover, and these can, thus, therefore, consequently, it is for this reason that, it can thus be concluded that, it can therefore be deduced that.